Hi everyone, I'm Rick Fussell, and this is the Ingrain Workshop. Today we're going to be building a joiner's mallet. I've got some scrap wood laying around the workshop. I've got some bird's eye maple, some red oak, and then I've got a hard dense wood from South America called Jatoba. We're going to take those woods, put them to work for us, and build a joiner's mallet. That's coming up next here at the Ingrain Workshop. So I made this mallet probably 15-20 years ago. It's out of black walnut and red oak, and it has served me well for all those years. You know, it's got some dings on it for sure, but overall I still use it today. The handle's a little chipped down at the bottom, but the mallet head is fine. But today we're going to be making a joiner's mallet, and what I'm going to be using is it's going to have a laminated head, and the inside of the lamination will be a Jatoba. Jatoba is a hardwood from South America, and it's really heavy and dense. I might drill some holes and fill in with BBs or fender washers. I'm not sure yet. This has got some good weight to it, so I might not add any weight to the mallet. The outside laminations will consist of a curly maple, and then the handle of the mallet will consist of red oak. So again, these were just some scrap pieces I had laying around the workshop, so we're going to put those to good use. So the first thing we need to do is go over to the planer and plane them, and then we'll come back here at the table saw and we'll join the edges. Now we have everything milled down. The curly maple, the Jatoba, and then the red oak has all been milled down properly. Now it's time to rip them to their final widths. I think the width of the mallet, I'm probably going to make 3.5 inches. So here at the table saw, we'll rip down the curly maple and the Jatoba down to 3.5 inches. So here at the miter saw, we're going to take and we're going to cross cut our curly maple at 6 inches. That's going to be the length of our hammer head, our mallet head. And we're going to cut 2 pieces because these are going to be veneered together. So we're going to need 2 of the curly maple outside pieces. And then we'll need 1 6-inch Jatoba piece, which will be the center piece. So this is primarily what the mallet head is going to look like, but we're going to have to take and cut the Jatoba piece, which is the inside piece, in half, and we're also going to cut that at a 2-degree angle. The reason why we're going to cut that at a 2-degree angle is because we want the handle of the mallet to be wedged in and never to come out of the head. So that's why we're cutting it. This is exaggerated, but there's going to be a 2-degree cut on that inside piece to wedge the actual handle, the red oak handle, inside the mallet. Now back here at the table saw, we're going to take and cut down our red oak handle, and we're just going to make it 1.5 inches square. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to have to do is cut out the tenon on the handle. And I went ahead and measured the tenon, and I'm going to have to cut an 1/8 inch off of two sides and 3/8 off the other. So what we're going to do right now is cut the shoulders for the tenon at those measurements, and I'm just going to use a setup block and a crosscut sled here on my table saw to cut the shoulders on the handle. And I think we're going to cut the shoulders approximately 4, maybe 4.5 inches down. And that will leave enough of the handle that will protrude above the top, because I don't want to cut my handle flush with the top. I'd like to sit it proud, maybe 1/8 of an inch or 3/16, just enough to put like a little chamfer edge around it. So let's go ahead and cut the shoulders on the handle next. So here at the bandsaw, I'm just going to take my time and cut the cheeks off the tenon here on the handle. This way the tenon will slide into the mallet head once we laminate it up. We haven't laminated it yet, and we'll do a test fit just to make sure everything's snug, because there might be some sanding that we have to do to trim this tenon down so it fits snug in the mallet head. Okay, so now that we've went ahead and cut out the cheeks here on the tenon of the handle, we're now going to move over to the drill press. I've got a 1/4 inch brad point bit chucked up in the drill press, and then I've marked out the center of the tenon, and then we're just going to cut a relief hole, and then once we get the relief hole drilled out, we're going to take and cut a slot, and this is just for the wedge that's going to be in the top of the mallet. To wedge the handle inside the head of the mallet. Now we're going to cut the relief slot. Okay, so now we're going to start the glue up of the mallet. But before we do, I did lay out some lines. I found the center line for the mallet, and then I marked off the width of the handle, and of course it's tapered at a 2-degree angle up, and then I did the same thing on the other side of the mallet, and then I labeled the insides of the mallet. So I went ahead and looked at the grain pattern and determined which sides would be the best for the outsides of the mallet, and marked them accordingly. And then same thing with the jatoba on the middle here. I labeled the top left and the top right. So what we'll do is, we've got reference lines now to line up our internal blank. We'll get this glued in, and then we'll shoot it in with a couple of brad nails. And then I've marked on each side here where the top piece will be glued to. And then to just keep it from moving around during the glue up process, we'll just take some sawdust and sprinkle some sawdust in here. But we want to be very careful when we start the glue up to stay away from the edge here, because we don't want any squeeze out to get in the handle area, if at all possible. So you want to avoid that. If you do, it's not a big deal. You can take a straw and get in there and clean it up. But I'd rather just not have to do that at all. So I'll probably not get that close to the handle lines here when we start the glue up. So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to start the glue up process. So now we'll just let the head set up overnight and let the glue dry, and then I give it a full 24 hours before we start working on the head. So I took the mallet head out of the clamps once we got it glued up, and I just wanted to dry fit the handle in. And I had some concerns about the wedge. So what I did is I cut 2 more reliefs for a total of 3 reliefs in the tenon. So now I'm going to be using 3 wedges to spread this out inside the mallet head. I was concerned that the red oak handle might crack, so I just cut 2 more relief grooves in the tenon, which will allow me for a total of 3 wedges and will help spread the handle inside the mallet head without splitting the red oak. So the next thing that we're going to do is here at the miter saw, I'm going to take and cut a 3-degree angle on both ends of the mallet. So we're going to do that right now. Also, before we make this cut, we just want to make sure that we've got the bottom end and the top end orientated correctly. So I'm going to put the top up against the miter saw fence and then make a cut. And I'm just going to sneak up on it and just sneak up till I get to the very top corner. And then we'll take a measurement and center the mallet and cut off the remainder to whatever side to make it get centered. So I've set the stop here on my ruler and measured over to the handle opening, and then took the same measurement on this side, and I'm probably about a 1/16 of an inch off. So I'm going to trim a 1/16 of an inch off of this edge, just so the mallet head is now balanced and in center with the handle. So now we've trimmed up the mallet head, and it's in balance, and it's center with the handle. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to take and draw and then cut over at the bandsaw a slight arch in the top, and that's what we're going to do next. I know it's hard to see from this angle, but I am cutting the line heavy. And I'm leaving about a 1/16 of an inch on top of the mallet head. And then what I'll do is, once I'm done cutting it out here at the bandsaw, I'll move over to my belt sander, and then I'll just sand it down and sand it all the way up to the line. I sanded the arch with 80 grit sandpaper here at the belt sander, and then I switched out to 120 grit and used a 120 grit belt to sand the entire mallet head. And this will be the final sanding here at the belt sander, and all the other sanding will happen with the orbital sander. So with the mallet head cut to its finished dimensions and with a 3-degree angle on both the mallet faces and then an arch top, we're now going to come here to the router table with a chamfer bit and just chamfer all the edges. Now you could use a roundover bit. I just prefer the look of the chamfer. It's all just personal preference. So that's what we're going to do next, is just put a chamfer on all the edges of the mallet head. So now with the mallet head done for the most part, I did go ahead and do the final sandings with the random orbital sander starting at 150 and then just working my way up to I think 220. The mallet head is pretty much done. So now we're going to turn our attention to the handle. So for the handle, what I've done is I've measured down from the shoulder an inch, and we're going to round over the edges, starting an inch down from the top of the handle, or the top of the shoulder, all the way down to the bottom of the handle. But before we cut that round over at the router table, I wanted to give the handle a subtle taper. So what I've done is I've just made a small arch on both sides to grip it with. And the reason I'm not that concerned about the taper at the top, more so the taper at the bottom, because like holding a golf club, if you notice the way the golf club or the golf grip is designed, it's tapered down at the shaft, and then up toward the top of the club, it flares out. That way when you're gripping it, there's really no way to pull it out of your hand, and you don't have to exert a lot of force. So when you're hammering, if it's tapered down at the bottom, flared out down at the bottom, it'll make it easier to hold. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to cut that taper here at the bandsaw. Once we get that taper cut, we're going to go over to the router table and just route all four corners or all four sides of the handle. Okay, so now that we have our handle cut out to the final design, and we have all the tapered edges on the handle, and it feels comfortable with my grip, I'm going to take now and just round over, a 1/4 inch round over on all four corners, and that'll just round out the handle a little bit more and make it a little bit more comfortable in my hand. And once we do that, we'll do a final sanding on the handle, and then we'll be ready to glue up both the mallet head and the handle. I almost forgot, we are going to stop our round over an inch from the top of the shoulder cut on the handle. So what I've done is I've set up a stop on my fence to stop the cut right here, an inch down from the shoulder. Next, we're going to cut out the handle wedges, and we're cutting those out of some of the leftover Jatoba. And a couple of months ago, I did a video on how to make a free shim jig to make your own shims. And I took it and just modified it for these smaller wedges, and used that to cut out all three wedges. I'll leave a link up here to that shim jig video if you guys want to check it out and build your own free shim jig. Okay, so you just saw me cut the shims out. Cut these out of Jatoba. I cut 3. I think that's going to spread the mallet out enough to wedge it in there real good. And again, I just dry fit it for right now. Next thing we're going to do is tape off the mallet head and the handle to minimize glue squeeze out. And then we're going to remove the wedges and glue it up. So I prefer to use packing tape. I think it's a lot easier to keep the glue squeeze out. versus just using some painter's tape. So if you do have some clear packing tape, I highly recommend using that in lieu of the blue painter's tape or frog tape. Okay, it's time for the glue up. So there you have it. I'm going to try to clamp it down. I really don't think I need to. It's wedged in there pretty good. We'll let the glue set up for 24 hours. Then we'll come and cut off the tenon. I'm going to leave the tenon about 1/8 of an inch proud, and then I'm just going to chamfer over all the corners. I just like the look of that. You could just cut it all flush and sand it flush with the top. That's just a personal preference. So here at the bandsaw, I'm just going to trim up the tenon and leave it about 1/8 of an inch proud of the mallet head, and then come back with a small chisel and just chisel or chamfer the edge all the way around the tenon, and then just hand sand it as flush as I can. And as you can see, I personally prefer it to stick out a little bit. I just think it gives it more character. So for the finish, I'm just going to use a Danish oil. I think this was a medium walnut stain. Probably should have went with clear. I just didn't have any clear in my arsenal, so I just went with this medium walnut. I think it still came out great. It's just a shop mallet, and I'm going to bang it up. So, but a couple of coats of this Danish oil is really all you need for something like this. And I think it turned out great. This was a very easy project to do, and like I mentioned at the first of the video, it's just scrap wood that I had left laying around the workshop. So, I highly advise doing a little project like this. It's pretty satisfying, plus it gives you another tool for your workshop, which is always a good thing. Well, that's going to wrap up this video. I hope this video gives you some ideas on how you can repurpose some of the scrap wood that's just laying around your workshop. It doesn't have to be the species of woods that we used in this video. It can be anything. It's just a way to repurpose something that you would typically probably just throw away, and it's something that you'll use in your workshop. So I hope this video helps you out. If it did, please consider giving it a like. If you're new to the channel and you like DIY projects and woodworking projects, then please consider subscribing, and please ring that bell so you'll be notified of all our upcoming videos. If you're an existing subscriber, then I really want to give you guys a shout out for all the support you've given us here at YouTube. I'm Rick Fussell. This is the Ingrain Workshop. We'll see you next time, and have a wonderful day.